Welcome, everyone. We're just going to wait a few minutes for everyone to join in, and then we'll start the meeting. We are just going to wait one more minute for people to come in, and then we'll start the meeting. All right, it's about 3 minutes past, so I think we can start this meeting. Welcome, everyone. My name is John Browning-Kent, and I work for the City of Somerville. On behalf of Mayor Ballantyne and Ward 5 Councilor Naima Said, I would like to welcome you to the first community meeting for the Kennedy School Playground Renovation Project. So in tonight's meeting, we're going to go over a quick introduction. We're going to introduce the design team and their past projects. We're going to go over an overview of the project along with the key goals of this project, and then discuss the inclusive playgrounds and what they mean and how they're going to be installed in this project, and then talk about different site element possibilities before going into the actual schematic designs. And then we will open it up for questions, comments, and talk about next steps. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. So again, my name is John Browning-Kent. I am with the Public Space and Urban Forestry Department, and I am a senior planner. I'd also like to recognize Ward 5 Councilor Naima Said for this project, as well as Principal Marshall. And then I would also like to introduce the landscape architects on this project, CBA Landscape Architects.
Thanks. So yes, I'm DJ Shagnon, principal at CBA Landscape Architects and a Somerville resident, parent to some kids over at the East, and now the high school. And I have with me two of my staff members who are working with me on this project.
I'm Preston Hallman, landscape architect.
I'm Chaitrali Doke. I'm the landscape designer.
And I would also like to give an opportunity if there are any elected officials in attendance, if they would raise their hand, and I would acknowledge them being here. All right. I am going to promote Naima Said to a panelist if you would like to say a few words about this project, Naima.
Well, I think you can see me. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello,
Okay,
yeah.
awesome. Hello, everyone. This is Naima Saeed, the Ward 5 City Councilor. Thanks to everyone for attending, and much gratitude to all city staff. Really excited about this meeting today.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for attending. And I also I saw one hand pop up for Elizabeth Eldridge. I just want to acknowledge that they're also here at this meeting. Thank you very much. And then I would also like to acknowledge that the Somerville Commissions with Persons with Disabilities has also been a big support of this project, and we have a few members of them in the crowd today, so I'd just like to acknowledge their attendance here. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
So just some formal stay connected slides. So the best way to know about this project is to sign up for information on the Summer Voice website. You can scan that QR code or type in that lengthy link. You can also just Google the Somerville Kennedy Playground Renovations project, and it will be the first project to come up on Google search. So there you can sign up for different stay informed things. I'd also like to acknowledge that there is a PDF version of this presentation up on the Summer Voice page right now. So if anyone would like to follow along and needs this presentation in a larger format, you can download that PDF on the website to follow along. Also, if you have any questions or comments, my information is up on that webpage, but also here on this slide. Next slide, please. And then just a few little Zoom how-tos. So using the reaction feature, you can click raise hand, which will allow you to have your hand raised, and I can unmute you, and you'll be able to ask your question or your comment. We do ask that you refrain from asking questions or comments until after we complete our presentation. Next slide, please.
I just want to quickly append to that it is possible to toss things into the chat. We will see them as they come up, so feel free to put questions in as you have them during the presentation in the chat, but we won't be addressing them until towards the end unless it's really critical.
Yes, thank you very much, TJ. And then rules of engagement. So the rules of engagement for tonight aim to reach targeted universalism. So we need to identify what we can all agree on as universal standards, acknowledge that people are situated at different distances from the standard, and develop solutions that target the gap to reach the universal standards. So how does this translate into this meeting? That is that everyone deserves to be respected, have an opportunity to participate, and to be heard without interruption. Therefore, take note of how often you speak, consider those who don't have a voice here today and how our discussions impact them, and listen respectfully and assume the best intentions in everyone. This will also kind of highlight our goals, which we'll discuss kind of later on in the slides. And with that, I would like to hand it off to CBA Landscape Architect.
Sure. So CBA, we're a small landscape architectural focused firm based out of Cambridge. As I said, I'm a Somerville resident. I'm one of 3 principals, and we've done, somewhere in the neighborhood of, I think, around 40 schoolyards. I forgot to check my stats on it, but quite a few over time, as well as a number of projects in and around Somerville and throughout Greater Boston. And our focus really is on public parks, playgrounds, and schoolyards, especially on the community process. We really believe that the best designs come from collaborations with the key stakeholders. So that's why we're here tonight. Some of our past schoolyard and inclusive play work that I thought was worth highlighting. We did a renovation for the Mary Burke Schoolyard in Chelsea, which is a 1st through 5th grade school that has about 2,200 students in the building between 4 different administrative schools that all share one playground. So it's an immense playground with 3 different play structures that targets a whole different range of ability levels, programs, challenges. This is a view that's looking across one of the play structures in the foreground toward another one in the back. You can see a bit of a recess field, and it's all bordered by a curving seat wall that because Chelsea is so low-lying, helps to alleviate flood concerns and so forth. It's actually a bit of landform to help um, prevent future flood risk. So sustainability, forward thinking, durability are real hallmarks of what we try to bring to the picture. The Andover West Elementary School and Shawsheen Preschool up in Andover are a new build construction for a school that recently completed. Preston, do you want to speak a little bit about this one since it's one that you were heavily involved in?
Yeah, so the school, it's a elementary school, and but there was also a preschool that also has a program for, children with special needs, autism, and so we created three different playgrounds, and one of the playgrounds was, well, they all, were focused on um, inclusivity, but there was one that had like an actual ramping play structure, and really kind of tried to service the preschool and the programs that were within that kind of that area.
Yeah, so this slide has an image of one of the main playgrounds, which has sort of a larger, fairly inclusive structure for older kids, a large bank of swings, an accessible spinner, and then on the right is a small detail of that ramp structure Preston was talking about. And we'll circle back. You'll see more images of that later in the presentation. Mother's Rest Playground in the Back Bay Fens is one of the first really inclusively designed playgrounds that I worked on back before that was even was even a buzzword. This was back in 2012 we worked on this project, and it came to light during the design process that one of the heaviest users of the space was a charter school for children, specifically for children with special needs, that was located nearby, that really used this playground as their primary recess and recreation space. So we worked with that community, with the teachers and the staff there, talking over options, finding out what they needed, and really exploring what would work best, particularly for their students, while still serving the greater community. I'm happy to say it's still well loved and going strong. Another recent one that might be familiar to some folks in the audience, we recently worked on the renovations to the West Somerville neighborhood school with the city, and we're really proud to design and work on that. Our Somerville roots go deep. We created some great new play spaces over there that I think people have been very pleased by, and we're hoping we can pull off the same for the Kennedy and get that kind of success. And then passing it back to John a little bit to talk about other schoolyards work the city has been doing.
Yes, so this picture showcases one of our most recent playground projects that we completed over at the Healy. And this just showcases the level of design that we're putting into all of our schoolyards. The Kennedy School is our last schoolyard that we need to renovate in our school's master plan project. And this is kind of the level that we're looking to bring this space up to. You can see there's accessible ramps that get people up to the second level of play structures. There's a lot of diversity of play. There's social emotional regulation areas that are kind of tucked away. There's athletic needs, wall ball. It really showcases kind of what these two basketball courts can become at the Kennedy School. And I just really wanted to highlight that this is kind of a once in a generation project that we get to do here. This, as you've seen in the previous basketball court, it has been around for about 30 years. And this playground that we are designing, we hope will stay around for that amount of time as long as it stays in good health and good care. Next slide, please.
Yep.
So just a little bit of history about the school itself. So the Kennedy School was originally constructed in the 60s and then renovated to its form that we see it now in 1997. That same year in 1997 was when the basketball courts were also built. So that means that this playground has been in its shape for the last 28 years. In the back of the Kennedy School in 2015, we renovated the pre-K to grade 2 playground, actually with CBA Landscape Architects as
That
well.
was us, yeah.
And that has turned out to be a very wonderful project in the back area. So this front is in due need of renovations now. So in 2019, the CPA awarded the city funds to begin the design of the Kennedy School. At that time, the pandemic did come out, and the funding that the CPA awarded was insufficient for the work that needed to be done. So later, we requested additional funds and contracted with our landscape architect, CPA LA. Next slide, please. So just quickly wanted to talk about the schedule of what's happened so far and what's going to happen over the next 2 years. So our first real kickoff with the community was our back to school night, where PSF and CBA came to the school and did a tabling event just to kind of inform people of the project, what was going on, what was about to come, and kind of what the main goals of this playground were. We then had an input session with the Kennedy School staff where we presented the project to them and tried to gain their feedback on different elements and do a temperature check with school staff to hear their concerns about the playground. Then we did other tabling events like the Harvest Fair and different events to kind of engage with students, parents, teachers, all kind of meeting them where they're at the school. Then we released an initial online survey where we got a lot of results back. A lot of these results did indeed match up with a lot of the conversations that I was having with different school staff and with different parents. There's kind of we'll go into this survey in a moment, but a big push for active uses and inclusive play spaces and trying to find the right balance of that. Also with some kind of relaxing social emotional areas and seating, shade, drinking fountains were all things that were very important in this design. So here we're at our first community meeting where we're going to present 3 different schematic designs and gather your feedback. Once this presentation completes, this recording will go up on the Summer Voice webpage, along with a survey within the next week to kind of gauge your opinions on these 3 schematic designs. That survey will stay out probably until Christmas time, and we'll gather your feedback and allow you to watch the videos, kind of review this presentation that's in PDF form. And then once we gather all that input and have different community workshops and different sessions with students and teachers over the next month, we'll refine our design and then present one refined schematic design in January during our second community meeting. And then from that point, the designers will push to making that one schematic design into actual construction drawings. And then we will look to put the project out to bid if we secure our CPA funds. CPA funds are still debating. They have another meeting December 17th, which we hope we will get a vote from the CPA for our bonding request.
And then, yeah, depending on funding, will dictate when we start construction.
Yes. So
Yeah.
the idea here, thank you, DJ. So the idea here is that construction will be over 2 phases because we're looking at the parking and the play space. We'll need to phase it so that the kids always have a place to use during the school year. So we'll look to phase it over 2 summers when there's the academic session is out. And these are just kind of some images from the different events that you can see. You can quickly go through them, but some different flyerings, tabling events, image boards to kind of gauge people's opinions on different play elements. Next slide. Some matching card games from Harvest Fair, some little sketches from kids, and
Yeah.
some ideas that the kids were looking for kind of at different events.
A lot of great opinions on there.
Yes, all recorded. So now I'll turn it back over to
Sure.
CBA Landscape Architects to talk about the
Yeah, we'll
survey
do
a
it.
little bit.
Hopefully a quick dive into some of the survey results. We got 78 responses to the online survey, which is great. Thank you to everyone out there who participated in that. It really does help create a great conversation. This is sort of a quick overview of some of the salient points. As John said, the things people felt were, most important as inclusive design features: shade, seating areas, climbing structures, ground level play features, social interaction zones. And then, everything had some amount of importance and so on. How important it was for different age groups, I think, is actually a pretty salient question that has kind of guided our designs a little bit. So the question actually was about, given that there's the K-2 playground at the rear of the school, given that there are other parks nearby, what age ranges did people feel we needed to be targeting on the front? And much as we expected, but we wanted to confirm, the real focus seems to be on the grades that are going to be using the schoolyard. The grades 3 through 8 are the primary focus, but acknowledging that this is a public park on the evenings, on the weekends, and everything else. Places for the tweens, the teenagers who might be there, with or picking up a sibling or want to go there in the evening to play basketball or whatever. And the earlier grades of the elementary school are going to use this on the evenings and weekends, etc. So you can kind of see that, green was it's very important, yellow was somewhat, red was not important, the kind of temperature gauges of how people felt about each of those age ranges. We asked people again, the cool colors being, I think this is cool, the warm colors being, towards red, no go, or towards gray, least important. People's preferences between different kinds of play equipment, vertical climbing structures, ground-based play elements, etc., etc. And again, this will be up on the website if people want to look at this in more detail. We'll also be asking more follow-up questions about this as we go further into the design and into the survey. But vertical climbing, really important to people. Obstacle course, sort of active play, sculptural, interesting net structures, I think, because those tend to be really inclusive. The play on those, and we'll show images of this sort of thing later, reaches the ground level. So it's very inclusive, very easy for people to get involved in of all ability levels. So just so everyone's clear on scope, looking at an aerial view of the school here, and there's a white dashed line you can see going around. We're really talking about the whole front side from the school building to Cherry Street. So we're not talking about touching anything along Sartwell Ave, back where the pool parking and also teacher parking is, or behind the school. And we're not talking about touching the pre-K to grade 2 playground that's in the back of the school or the ramp up to it. It's really focused on the basketball court, front play area, the slopes of the hillside, the driveway, the parking lot, the entry to the school, and so forth. No. So just quick context for the school. There's about 500 students. I think that the last data I've had it in the high 400s rather. The Kennedy School, one of the unique things about it is that it is the host to 3 unique programs that provide additional assistance for different students with special needs: the SEEK program, the SKIP program, and the Life Skills program, all of which have different focuses. But this is really one of Somerville's most diverse schools in terms of student populations with special needs and so forth. And the front playground that we're focusing on, as I said, really during the school day serves the 3rd through 8th grade classes. So some of the key goals that the city presented to us as what's driving this project from their perspective, and what we've heard from the community, is that this is the city's first inclusive playground. So it'll be designed to be safe, be durable, be easy to maintain, and respond to the needs of the whole community. And the real focus is on community collaboration, working with the whole community to ensure it reflects everybody's needs. On inclusive play, which we'll talk more about what that means in a bit. On both active and passive recreations, that there are opportunities to play, but also to relax, to connect, for social skills, and also for learning. Educational features that foster learning and exploration. It is a schoolyard, in addition to functioning as a park on the weekends. Shade and comfort are a big priority that we keep hearing. I think everybody knows that the current asphalt wasteland that's out there is pretty inhospitable. We are looking at site reconfiguration. When the city did a study before they even started the project and realized that comparing to other important universal playground or inclusive design playgrounds in the area as models, that the existing 2 basketball courts plus a bit is a little too small to really fit the sort of program they wanted. And also, as we'll get into, there are some safety and circulation concerns and sense of arrival and things like that, that the current parking lot configuration isn't working great for. So we're looking to explore new layouts for the parking lot and the bus drop-off to really take advantage of this once-in-a-generation opportunity that John mentioned, to allow for the playground expansion while still meeting the school needs, and to take that opportunity to make improvements to the safety and the circulation, even if it means losing a few parking spaces. And we'll talk more about that. And then sustainability and resilience are just key facets of the city's focus on everything, and of CBA's practice. I mean, we all live in a changing world, and we need to be designing for it. So stormwater strategy, permeable pavements, resilient best practices for handling those sorts of things, expanding tree plantings, as much as we can in a schoolyard space, keeping in touch with the city's award-winning pollinator action plan. Kudos to Public Space and Urban Forestry for that recent award. So yeah, what is an inclusive playground? What does that mean? So the baseline is the Americans with Disabilities Act. That was passed in 1990, updated in 2000, and it prohibits discrimination of people with disabilities in public life. And that is the minimum standard that the city and CBA must and do uphold in our public space work. But inclusive design and universal design are other terms that go further. So, obviously exclusion, definitely not what we want, where people can't participate at all because of some sort of barrier. Segregation, where you provide a separate space, still doesn't really meet ADA in spirit. Integration is really what we're going for, that it is accessible to someone. But integration is that baseline, and what we're looking for is really to get inclusion, where everyone can fully participate. And there are different playgrounds. Accessible playgrounds, that's the baseline. Universal design is designing so that it is, in theory, usable by all people to the greatest extent possible. And that's fairly common in the design industry. A truly inclusive space is recognizing and encouraging everyone's right to fully participate and contribute to whatever the experiences are at the site. And that's the higher bar that we're shooting for in this project. It's allowing children, in the case of inclusive play, allowing children of all abilities to grow, learn, belong, and it breaks down both the physical and social barriers and creates spaces. So it's not just focusing on physical barriers by having a ramped structure where someone with a wheelchair can get in to the play elements, but how they participate in that varies depending on what you do. And to Preston's credit, I didn't work much on the Endover project, but the Endover structure that we're showing here, we're showing it because it's got the ramp, but it is actually a fairly inclusively designed structure. Beyond that, you just can't see it in that photo. So inclusion goes beyond that physical access to where people can actually be participating meaningfully and promoting confidence, social justice, etc. It's important. There are all sorts of different disabilities that show up. So there are, the big purple circle is out of every, I forget how many children this is, but out of the,
I believe it's 1,000.
thank you, yes, out of 1,000, it's about 47 who have specific learning disabilities. Another group with speech or language disabilities. There are mobility issues, autism spectrum, hearing disabilities, vision disabilities, all sorts of things that participate. It's not just wheelchair access. This data is from the particular graphic is from a handbook called 7 Principles of Inclusive Design, which is sort of one of the more well-known guiding documents in this. I don't actually know the original source of the data, but I will track that reference down
We
if
can look into
anyone
that
cares.
and get back to you.
There was a question in the chat that popped up from
Yes.
one of our folks on the Disability Commission who wanted that. So the 7 principles that really guide inclusive design sort of build on each other. It starts with making sure that it's a safe design that allows people to safely and comfortably explore and engage and play. From that, you can be active. It gives them the opportunity, gives everyone the opportunity to, be active with minimal fatigue so that really people can be involved in the play for long and meaningful periods of time. To be comfortable, have appropriate sizes and space for diverse user groups and for particular needs. So those places of refuge for kids that need to step back and take a moment, get a little quiet or so forth. But also, enough room for mobility and so on. That allows a space to be fair. It promotes social justice, allows everyone to participate socially and physically. That means everyone gets to be included. Full participation in the play, which brings communities together. And that allows each kid to be smart and be independent, to discover and demonstrate capabilities, explore to their ability level, find social and physical play opportunities and challenges, and provide alternate formats of communication that support self-determination and independence. It's really a set of guiding principles that we work through and we double check as we're working through the design to make sure that we're really reaching this bar. Why it matters: inclusive play helps children gain confidence, gain independence, children of all ability levels. It's about friendship and belonging and nobody having to feel excluded, so that it's a vibrant public space where everyone feels welcome, everyone feels included, and it really it reflects a commitment to equity and builds connections and empathy between the kids and their classmates, or other parts of the community. And it's also not just, even though this is a schoolyard, it's not just about the children either. There are plenty of families where it's the caregiver who has some sort of barriers that they encounter at other playgrounds and so forth. And we want that not to be present here, so that when a family comes here, everyone can feel connected and involved, and everyone feels welcome. So with that, sort of looking briefly at the site, just a brief aerial view layout to get everyone oriented. Currently traffic is one way from Elm Street through the pickup and drop off loop and out onto Cherry, with the school's parking lot being in the front, the basketball courts. There's a little utility area, the pool entrance where everyone who's coming outside of, well, outside of school uses to get to and from the pool goes. There's a little more parking around the back and sides, the K-2 playground in the back. And one of the big things that's been my own personal experience has been that sense. I mean, my kids have had, the summer theater camp in the Kennedy's classroom, and the number of times I've come and families, grandparents, parents who aren't at the school are milling around trying to figure out where the entrance is, because as you come in from the sidewalk, and let's face it, most of Somerville arrives here from parking on the street or on foot or on bike or something, you don't see the entrance to the school. The sight line goes in at a blank wall. Looking up from Elm Street, you're looking at the end of a blank wall and past the school. There's not a real sense of arrival. The play area, I think everyone has a pretty good sense of, this is sort of a look around in 4 directions: up the basketball courts towards the school building, out towards the parking lot, out towards the other side on Sartwell, and out towards Cherry Street. And it's a big, empty expanse of asphalt with a 10-foot high fence and a pretty inhospitable character, no shade, very little tree canopy, etc. Looking at some other images, there's that sense of you walk up the sidewalk in this bottom right image, and you can't even see the entry to the school because of where you're arriving. The classrooms spill out directly into the play area with very little else. The basketball courts, big, open, well used. There's a little bit of site furniture, picnic tables, and so forth that gets scattered around the space. But really, one of the big issues that comes up is circulation, access, and so forth. As I mentioned, you've got the vehicular circulation, the pedestrian paths kind of cross it willy-nilly, trying to get to spaces. Pick up and drop off kind of congregates in 2 halves on different sides. That's what those pale yellow areas indicate. There's not great sight lines. There's a desire line to go through the space outside of school hours and so on. So we really want to try to resolve some of that as we work through it. We're fighting a little bit against slopes in that the basketball court area is leveled out. And the green here are areas that are relatively flat. Yellow is fairly sloped, but not so sloped that it would need to be an ADA compliant ramp. And then the red zones are areas that right now are over that 1 in 20, that if you were officially putting a walk there, it ought to be a ramp. So we need to address that to make it a barrier-free entrance experience for everyone. And it means we're also sort of fighting against the grades getting up to the building. Quickly looking at the site reconfiguration, like I said, the primary focus is expanding the playground space and streamlining the drop-off and the parking so that we can meet that generational opportunity to really create the playground that this space and the students and the neighborhood need, as well as meeting the other logistical needs and clarify those traffic patterns, create safer pedestrian crossings, better visibility and pedestrian access to really give a sense of arrival and entry that prioritizes pedestrians. Expanding the bike parking. The bike racks are currently overloaded, so we need to provide more bike parking, and we want to minimize the parking impact on the school, keeping all those things in mind. The city and CBA have done a quick study of sort of how parking compares at the different schools. The Kennedy has currently the highest parking to student ratio of any of the schools in the city. Most of the others are sort of a lower ratio, not even counting ones like the Winter Hill where the parking went away entirely. Gives a quick sense of that. So right now there are 73 total spaces at the school. There's 43 in the front lot, 30 around the back edge. So we are looking right now, and this is still in progress. We're working with our civil engineers. We're fine tuning. We're trying to get as much parking in as we can while still getting that expanded footprint. But this shows you in sort of the color, the proposed layout, which would be a one-way loop still from Elm to Cherry, but that shifts over a little bit to provide a much better sightline and sense of arrival to the main entrance. We've got drop-off areas for buses or for parents of children with special needs, etc., or after school times to drop off. And you can see how it compares to the existing play area. So we're really gaining all of this space. That's the original fence line out to the new area as additional play space, streamlining things, making for safer. There's no longer a diagonal cut through the parking lot from the corner and so forth to really improve safety, streamline connections and so forth. And the end result of that is we'd be down about 16 spaces from the current parking counts, depending on where things go. And we're working with traffic and parking. We're working with the school to try to make sure we're still meeting their needs. This is sort of the general direction, but nothing's set in stone yet. So looking at that, we'll start talking about the rest of the site, that expanded playground area and the entry experience and what those program possibilities are. So we still want to include, because we've heard it from everyone, some hardcourt sports, possibly striped for multiple sports, other types of play and so forth. Oops. We want to include gathering spaces. There are images here of, a seating wall with benches on top, Kenny Park, which some of you might know, which has movable furniture. The Alma Del Mar School in New Bedford, where we had stepped seating, that sort of thing is a possibility. We want to provide shade structures. Maybe there's seating under shade. Picnic table sized, circular table size. There's a bunch of different options for those gathering spaces, but really creating those social spaces for kids to be able to interact and play, for the community to use the rest of the time and over the summer and so on. We're going to end up with some blacktop because I actually want to skim back just a second to the utility area that's over here. We need to maintain vehicular access to. It also serves as the fire access for the building for fire safety. So there's sort of a clear zone from the building out to about where the wall is and the utility area that will need to stay clear. So we know we've got some asphalt area. We can occupy that with playground graphics that are vibrant, that are eye-catching. These are past projects we've done that had a timeline of civil rights history, because that was important at the Martin Luther King Jr. School, or other sorts of play events with a nautical theme at a school in Charlestown, nature-based stuff at a school in West Roxbury. This was interesting. It was a school in the North End that we incorporated the Fibonacci spiral as well as different sea life, because the school had a partnership with the aquarium. So there's ways to make the blacktop a functional space other than games. We want to include green infrastructure to make the space a more sustainable space. So, so that instead of everything just going into the storm drain, it can recharge. We did that at Kremen Playground over in East Somerville by McGrath there. And this is, just a great example of the sort of green space with permeable pavers, trees, shade, and so forth that a schoolyard can transform into. on the right. We want to include play equipment, and there's a whole variety of styles from sort of, traditional post and platform, spinners, larger group dish swings, um, structures with set sensory features built in like rolly slides, climbable net type things that incorporate other elements and so forth. Inclusive and open play equipment. This is hard to see from the photo, but it's actually accessed from one level into the play structure from above or from the ground below, and different sorts of features. And we'll talk more about play equipment in a future meeting also. There are also specific particular inclusive play features that we want to target and think about here, whether that's, a wheelchair accessible glider that someone can roll right onto and participate in. It's kind of like a swing. It's not quite as dynamic, but the true wheelchair swings are only for therapeutic settings, and they aren't really legally allowed for safety reasons because they're so big and heavy. There's potential for injury if they're misused. So they're not for public park settings, but this sort of glider swing kind of bridges that gap and actually creates a really great play experience. This is from a recent, it's not ours, but a recent inclusive schoolyard up in Medford, the McGlynn Elementary, which we've been studying as one of our more impressive recent models that we're looking at. There are, spinners that are supportive enough to really help kids with mobility and upper body strength issues that are also great for, everybody. Picture exchange communication boards, wheelchair accessible spinners, maybe ramping on the structure, maybe not, that sort of inclusive play elements. And even though the schematic designs you'll see don't show in detail, yes, we'll have a water fountain and bottle filler, possibly multiple ones in all the designs. We'll be including some lighting elements of some variety, like is shown in the upper right, in the schemes. We'll have trash cans, we'll have benches, we'll have seating. We want to look at including shade structures, more attractive fencing, exploring sensory play like musical instruments and so forth, or sensory experiential walls and so on. So launching into the designs, these are all sort of early kit of parts, and we want you to think about what works for you, what doesn't out of each of them. I'll go through the three schemes kind of quickly. So the first scheme has this sort of curvilinear form. It's got potentially up to, although it could be fewer than this, 4 potential points of entry: the pool stairs, sort of the entrance near where it is now off of the front area. We could put an entrance at the corner near where the driveway comes in so that you can get straight in. We could even look at putting an entrance in from the corner of Cherry and Sartwell. This explores all of them. That might work, that might not. So this scheme has, just a half basketball court and key, other sorts of open play space, foursquare, possibly educational stuff, and so forth to keep that corridor open, and really exploring the idea of working with the landforms. So maybe the path berms up and then you can get onto a ramped structure and in that connects you through. The play equipment in all of these is sort of placeholders and early ideas. Full set of swings, a shaded plaza area under some trees with tables and chairs, seat walls around it, a lower space and so forth. And really this, having all of the entrances kind of constrains things. So we might end up with a situation, depending on how the grades work out, where there's a sloped walk that gets you up to the main entrance, as well as a few stairs right in the front. And we'll have to explore whether that works out well. Additional bike parking in a few spots and so on. The one corner also takes advantage of the retaining wall to build up sort of an elevated play area that has hillside features, and we'll make sure there's an accessible route up to it that really allows people to exchange. Some variation in topography is great for play. So this, some images of past projects and other things that have that sort of that hillside play. And in this one, there's a walk up the back that sort of circles around the playground that gets you up to that level where there's a dish swing. There's a slide down. We could make it a more inclusive slide by having what gets called a dignity exit on it to one side, where someone who's uses a mobility device can slide down and then have a place to wait where they're out of the way and safe while they're getting back into the device or whatever. That the sort of the way a half court can get integrated into the space, the way that kind of ramped play structure can work in an example of a plaza with trees, seating, shade, seat walls around it, and so forth. Moving on to a second option with sort of a different aesthetic. This one incorporates a full-size middle school basketball court. So it's a little smaller than a high school court, but works well for the age group we're working at. We're exploring, do people like the idea of extending out that wall to provide a better space for wall ball? Maybe if that's a priority, this becomes 2 half courts instead, if that's something people are comfortable with, to free up more space for the wall ball, or it could stay as is. Different sort of approach with 4 square and 9 square, which I don't know how popular that is currently, but it's definitely kind of an interesting variation on it. A little sort of obstacle course, run, jump, walk, longer hopscotches, that kind of thing. And really in this one, the play equipment is sort of central with a looping path that goes around it, as well as a separate play area that kind of could create a quieter nook for some of the sensory play features, a place of refuge, that kind of thing. It's an opportunity, if it's a community priority, to include some preschool age equipment for the evenings and weekends. But really the play equipment focused in the middle, a quieter seating area with different stepped forms and so forth for seating on permeable paving, and then a shade structure, possibly with a labyrinth under it. We did, or something else. The Capuano was recently redone, and the labyrinth was a popular enough feature of the previous iteration of the playground, or of that asphalt play space, that they specifically requested that we keep it and repaint it when the shade structure went in and the area got resurfaced, which was neat to know. But some of the sacrifices for going up to a full basketball court, we might not have room for a full set of swings. So we might just do a few dish swings or things like that. It's about understanding the possible trade-offs between things. A different sort of shade structure feature. All 3 of them have something going on in the vicinity of the entrance that is shown transparent, but you can see the outline of it, where there would be some sort of entry feature to draw your eye and give a sense of arrival. So again, this is the new shade structure that went into the Capuano, the labyrinth in front of it, sort of an idea of what playground graphics can feel like. This sort of stepped seating area is a possible model, although we'd be sure to have spaces within it so that it's fully accessible and anyone can get in and fully participate in the space. Wall ball. It's popular now. It will probably continue to be popular, and we'd love to give a designated space for it so that kids aren't playing wall ball against the windows of the school. And then an image from the recent renovation at the West Somerville that shows sort of some of the possible types of play elements that are both a play space plus a little bit of a place of refuge if a kid needs a quieter sense of enclosure. and different sorts of play experiences that were really successful there, as well as the sort of in the background, if you know the West, the taller play structure that's there is shown. And then the third and final scheme sort of inverts the previous one in a sense. Instead of the play equipment being central, it creates a larger sports court area as central with space for a full basketball court plus an extra key, which could have multi-sport goals in case kids are trying to play soccer or something. And then around it, play equipment, a parkour area, possibly taking advantage of the height of the wall to create a climbing wall over the rubber surface, inclusive play features, again, a bank of swings, some sensory play items down in the bottom right corner. And then just as you're entering into the space and sort of carved through by this walking path, an area of seating. This one shows a mix of seat walls plus some movable group seating, which I'll get into momentarily, that could be reconfigured and rearranged. So tables and chairs, like are shown in the bottom right here, where they fit, 3 adults or 2 adults, depending on the size of the table, but they're heavy enough that they're not gonna walk away, but they're lightweight enough that they can get reconfigured. You could get 4 middle schoolers on one of these, pick it up, move it around, put them together to make a picnic table, set them up side by side to sort of create, areas of table and of bench and desk in case a classroom wanted to rearrange and do a lesson out there and so forth. The upper right is the climbing wall at Morse Kelly Playground that we did quite a while ago. An image on the upper left of that sort of multi-sport goal with the barriers, a little bit of a soccer net sort of thing, and a basketball hoop hanging out over it. And on the bottom left, the sort of parkour area play that we're considering as an option from Kenny Park in Davis Square, if folks know that one, with the balls and the so forth. So yeah, that's a brief overview of all 3 of the designs, and we'll come back to this for discussion, for questions, and so on. And I'll turn it back over to John to sort of bring us to a close.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that presentation, DJ. So now we're going to move into the questions and discussions portion of this. Oh, sorry. Let me just quickly talk about the next steps and then we'll talk about the discussion. So what's happening next over the next week or two after this meeting's over? PDF of this presentation is already up on the website. A recording of this video will also be up, and I can show highlight specific points in the presentation if people just need a quick 3 schematic design video recording. So we'll go over that, and then a survey will be posted in the next week related to these designs. Gather more feedback about this. That'll be open for a few weeks as we gather results. Then we'll close that down, look through all the results as we're having conversations with school administration to further these designs. And then we'll work on our next set of designs and present them to you all again in January. So the link to the survey, to the presentation, and the recording is all going to be on that Summer Voice webpage, which you can scan the QR code for there or just Google Kennedy School Year Playground Renovation Project.
Awesome.
Next slide.
I also want to quickly add, since I know it's come up in both the survey responses and the discussions, that in addition to working through school administration, we're looking for ways to involve and get input directly from the kids as well, through the teachers, through the classrooms. And we're working on the logistics of that, but we have some very successful models we've done in previous schoolyard projects that we want to talk to Principal Marshall more about and get rolling here as well to get direct feedback from the kids, because really they're some of the most important end users of this space, and getting their input is pretty critical.
Exactly. So I believe so. There were a lot of conversations in the chat bar. I think what we're going to do is start with having people raise their hands, and we can call on you. You can unmute yourself and talk. I would just ask that if there were some topics that you brought up in the chat that you would like to bring up now while you're speaking, feel free to bring those up. And then when I go through the chat later in this meeting and read those, we can just glance over them because you've already brought them up. So again, that raise hand feature should be at the bottom of Zoom, and you should either see a reactions button with a raise hand feature in it, or just simply the raise hand button itself. I see one hand first, Jessica Adams. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, I am chiming in as a mom of three kids at the Kennedy. They're in grades 1, 4, and 5. I'm also a representative from the CPAC to the Kennedy School, and each of my kids has a disability of a different sort from one another. So we've had lots of experience on both the tot lot in the back and now the front playground as well. I am very excited about the renovations that are coming. I touched on a few things within the chat that I would really like to bring to the attention of the design team, just because they're concerns that not only I have, but have also been expressed to me by some of our school CPAC community and greater CPAC community, which is also chaired by school committee elect Liz Eldridge. On a personal level, I did have concerns, not necessarily against a pollinator garden whatsoever, like a garden feature, but I'm asking that it be considered that in lieu of a pollinator garden, we perhaps have something like a learning garden where we can have some plants that can be utilized within school meals that can be tended to by Seek, Skip, life skills, and other students as a form of sensory integration as well.
Yeah.
That nature play is incredibly important for developing brains, especially those that are not necessarily neurotypical or crave a different kind of sensory input. And additionally, using that as a form of local food source is just, it's great for everyone at the school as well. Secondly, there are a ton of kids who have really severe allergies to stinging kinds of pollinators. So I'm just looking out for that. I know on a personal level, one of my kids had to be hospitalized after accidentally knocking into a wasp nest at Morse Kelly Playground last summer. And so I am glad that my child is verbal and able to tell me about discomfort, but I do have concerns for some of our students who have more severe disabilities. On a secondary concern, I am just really, really excited that so much vertical play space is being considered. However, one of the things I would love to see is vertical play space that might push children to, of any age, cross their midline. Although the playground is essentially made for grades 3 through 8, kids who are in Seek, Skip, and life skills are all ages, not just grades 3 through 8.
Yep.
And crossing the midline is such an important part of learning to read, right? We have a lot of different opportunities here to not only help our students, but also help behavior management, our teachers and our administrative staff within the school have a more successful day on a day-to-day level. And if we have, for instance, musical instruments or sensory involvement that encourages crossing of the midline or more vestibular input, we can really help learning outcomes and the ability to focus with our kids. And just making sure that we have truly inclusive spaces, not only just with a focus on grades 3 through 8, but on kids who have different mobility needs, who have different visual or auditory processing or spatial processing needs. In order to be this once in a generation kind of success,
Yeah.
we should really be looking forward at what does it mean to be progressive in terms of our most vulnerable community members. So just a couple of things to take into consideration there if I'm able to give my 2 cents on that. I'm really excited about this. And I think that we're going to be able to create something great, but also just getting more community involvement and outreach to the Kennedy School and just the Somerville community in general would be such a wonderful way to get everybody on board and a bigger understanding of what a big picture could look like for all of our kids. And that's all I wanted to chime in for now. So thank you.
Thank you. I want to quickly respond to some of that. I'm very much on board. I hear you about the anaphylaxis and allergic reactions to bees and wasps and so forth. And to the extent that I think we'd focus on pollinators here, it would be birds rather than bees and so forth, which is a different kind of garden design and much more along the lines of the learning garden you're mentioning. The sorts of things like food production and so on can be tough to deal with and maintain in a space that's open to the public like this front space is going to be. I know there are some garden beds in the rear space, but it's possible when we've done outdoor classrooms and learning gardens like that in other schoolyards, they've resulted in a small fenced area that then classes can also use so that the access to it is controlled. It's not just open to the public at all times. But if that's something that there's an interest in, and there was certainly some interest in that sort of thing from staff during the staff survey that we did too, we can definitely explore doing that. I think that's great. And the rest of what you were talking about, the inclusion, the making sure that we're addressing the full range of folks and so forth, and getting broad input are all top goals and all things that we really also want to focus on in this. So thanks lots for your input, and it's very much heard and appreciated.
Yes, thank you very much, DJ. You hit the nail on the head. We'll definitely refrain from any pollinators that sting in this area. We've learned our mistakes in other parks. All right, Kat, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Great. Hi, thank you so much. My name is Kat Johnston. I have 2 kiddos at the Kennedy, a 4th grader and a 1st grader. I just want to share my appreciation for all of you on this project. I know it's a lot of work and a long time coming. Thank you also for the focus on the older children, older students, the older children. I guess 2 points that I just wanted to highlight was one, as you're thinking about the entrances, please also keep in mind where families will be able to gather during drop-off and pickup times, because I think that's a big loss for Kennedy families when they transition from the tot lot, and like this loss of a sense of community as their children progress to the front side of the school.
Yeah.
And then the other piece is just, I wonder what consideration has been given to putting in a turf and allowing more like flexible open spaces for kids to play and run, especially knowing that a lot of the students do play soccer and basketball, and there are just like broader turf field needs within the city.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer the turf question first. So that is an option that we can explore here. We have done it at the Brown School as well as the West. But the thing is, it would be a very small turf. Additionally, we as a city can't plow artificial turf during the winter, so that space would be unusable during the winter. Whereas if it was an asphalt surface or a hardscape, we would be able to plow that. Making that a more usable surface. So it is an option here, but there are some trade-offs that we need to kind of decide if that's worth the trade-off for winter play.
But definitely something that we're open to exploring, and we can gauge interest in it and so forth on the second survey for sure. And Kat, in response to your comment about drop off and pickup, I mean matches my own experience as a parent of kids that went through the East, that, you get to know everybody when everyone's dropping off in the front of the school. And then at the East, the older grades start moving around the side of the building, the back of the building, jumping around. They're not all in the same place as siblings. And I feel like I lost touch with half the parents I used to see. And creating that kind of gathering space, really refocusing things around the school entrance and creating a space that's hospitable to parents that are waiting, or that could spill into the playground, are both real priorities of the design here. Yeah, absolutely.
Pat, and I believe you had one question about the survey being open longer if uh, through the winter break.
Oh, yeah.
There are options that we could leave the survey open longer. We just want to be able to close it at a certain point to be able to kind of compile that information and make a movement towards a design. If we're looking at the survey and it's kind of a unanimous answer in one direction, we can start to move in that direction while still leaving the survey open to just keep truth checking those choices. But at a certain point, we do need to kind of close it down so that we can kind of work through our next iteration of designs. But I do
Yeah.
think that's a very valid point. Winter break, we will probably get a lot more responses from people because they have a little bit more free time. So that's a wonderful idea. Thank you.
And I want to encourage folks too, when the survey comes back around, have your kids take it. Have your kids take it separate from you if that's feasible, if you've got enough devices in the house to do that. The more input we get from everyone, the better. It's terrific.
All right. I believe Christine is next. You should be able to unmute yourself.
Hi, hi, thank you, Christine Stone, parent of a just left the Kennedy ninth grader and a seventh grader. I had a question about parking and how parking may or may not have determined the size of the play space. So can you address that, whether or not you were mindful of the fact that you wanted to land on 43 spaces or whatever is now left in your current design, and then use what was left over for the play space? Or was the play space size the driving force here, and along with access to the front door and the fire truck access and whatever you had left over, you had left over? So that's question one.
Sure.
Question two is, um, and I know looking at the survey of other schools, the Kennedy has more parking than other schools.
Mhm.
I think parking is likely, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, is an asset to the teachers. The fact that, they can park right at the school is
It
a
is.
huge benefit to them, and that probably could have something to do with teacher retention, which I think everyone would agree with is very important. Um, so I would hope that the design team and or the John, your department, would be thinking of creative ways to maybe maintaining parking for those teachers that is lost through this project, which I think many people would say is, we losing parking for this project may be okay, but is there a way to be creative to maintain parking nearby the school, or reconfiguration of existing parking spaces so that you can gain back as many of those spaces as possible? And then finally, the analysis in your slide deck is
Mhm.
parking spaces to students. I think I'm pretty sure no students or their parents use any of that parking. I think the better analysis would be parking spaces to staff.
Yes, agreed. Yes, the staff data wasn't as readily available at the point when we were putting that analysis together as the
Mhm.
student data, because you can get that off of the state's website from school surveys. But yeah, was that all, Christine? Sorry, I don't mean to.
Yeah, that was
Okay.
it.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally agreed. We used students as sort of a proxy for staff levels, but specific to the Kennedy, we actually talked with Principal Marshall and school staff to get a count of the actual staff. During the online survey, we pulled the staff to see, who tends to drive, who tends to bike, who tends to walk, who takes public transit, and get a sense for the proportion of those. And we're trying to thread the needle, to be honest. To your question about did the size of the play space come first or the parking come first, we explored a number of options for parking, saw what the impacts were for play, and are trying to right size something that expands the play space as much as possible, streamlines that sense of entry, and still retains enough parking that we feel we'll be able to, as you said, offset it with other strategies that we're exploring with the traffic and parking department, with administration and so forth, to try to find creative solutions, like you said, so that we're not having a long-term impact. That the last thing we want to do is have teachers bail and go to another school, especially over something like parking.
DJ,
So it was sort of threading the needle, but
I'd like to just jump in here with a little bit of research that happened kind of before we hired the landscape
yes.
architects. And one of the big items that kind of kickstarted this project was that there was a big push for this to become an inclusive playground. And in our comparison to other inclusive playgrounds throughout the greater New England area, this lot size was too small to incorporate any of those inclusive elements in a substantial enough amount for it to be a fun, enjoyable play space. It was about 4,000 to 10,000 square feet under the other playgrounds in the area. So from that math, we kind of decided that we did need to expand the play area. And then, like DJ said, it was kind of this push and pull of if we push the playground back a few more feet, how many parking spaces can we add? If we push the playground forward a little bit, how many do we lose? And kind of going through iteration and iteration of those parking schemes. Like DJ said before, also, this isn't a final parking scheme. We're still working through them. We would love to hear your feedback on this iteration. And we are also happy to kind of dig into those parking counts to look at a teacher to parking space ratio versus a student to parking space ratio, because like you pointed out, that isn't as accurate of information.
I think also to the rest of Christine's question about what drove the arrangement, I'm skimming backwards to try to get to the diagram. There's a minimum safe distance that the exit onto Cherry Street can really be from the corner, even though there aren't people exiting all the time and so forth. So it becomes difficult to push this any further that way, if we were trying to maximize even more. And it also the playground would start to bulge out and cut that sight line off again. Also, we're going downhill on Cherry. So the further we go downhill, the steeper the slope coming in is from the street. So it was really a combination of factors. I also, since Christine is unmuted or unmutable at the moment, she had posted a question in the chat about the current basketball court design, creating a great deal of storm runoff onto the grassy area and out onto Cherry and the sidewalk. And yes, absolutely, that sort of drainage issue is something we will be addressing and fixing over the course of the project, whatever the design ends up in that corner.
That runoff has been driving me crazy for 9 years.
It's been terrible.
Yes, the freezing issues and then the pooling by the staircase is definitely an issue that we can easily fix in this project. All right, thank you very much, Christine. I believe these raised hands have kind of jumbled around, and I do apologize if I call out of order because they're not numbered, but I'm just going to go down this list. I do apologize if people have been waiting longer, but Nicole Cannon, you are next on my list, and you should be free to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
Hi. First, I just want to thank John and the PSUF staff and DJ for this presentation and giving us the opportunity to ask some questions. I know this has been a long time coming and a journey for all of you, so I really appreciate you taking the time. Um, I guess I wanted to start. So I'm a parent of a kindergartner that uses a mobility aid, and uh, John and I have had a couple discussions, including at Harvest Fest, about this. But I just wanted to put some attention and emphasis to kind of like the main play structure, the meat and potatoes of a playground, right? Like any playground that you go to, you've got kind of the main play structure and then some outliers, right? And those outliers are very important and very fun. So I don't want to, but I think I'd really love to see the main play structure accessible to all children. I just, I feel like it's the most kind of active, the busiest element of any playground, and I think it definitely makes kids like mine feel included, and I think a lot of interaction and socialization happens on a play structure like that. So I'd love to see some ramp element included on there. Um, um, I'm trying to think of a good example. I think we've talked about this, John, but Cypress Street Playground has a really nice play structure where there's a ramp and then climbing elements on the side. So it really serves children of all abilities, children with mobility aids, and then the most active, able-bodied children. So something like that I would really love to see. And I'm so happy to see that sensory elements are included to give kids that kind of downtime and rest as needed. And the seating elements there, I think, are genius. And shoot, I want to make sure I'm hitting all my main points here. And just that I think over the next, couple of months, I think some attention really has to be also given to families in the Seek and Skip program and families of kids that have disabilities. Some of these families are not English speakers. Surveys can be really hard. So I think like a coffee hour or a play date or something to kind of address the unique needs of kids that use mobility aids would be really helpful. And that's all for now. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Nicole. Yes, to all of those. I do also want to apologize for my attendance in the coffee hour today that I missed. I do apologize for that. But yes, we will definitely look at programs. Nicole, I do know I owe you an email, and I would love to coordinate on kind of some different events. Yes, that is definitely something that we are really trying to do in this next stage. I think being able to pick out the type of play equipment is a really fun activity that kids get really excited about. I saw that a lot at the Harvest Fair. Kids were flipping through the books, calling out all the different play structures they would love to see here. So I think now that we have some preliminary designs, this is a great opportunity for us to kind of start to embed ourselves deep in those Seek, Skip, and life skills programs.
Yes.
And yes, you and I have talked about this, but ramps to structures, if they're multi-tiers, is definitely understood here. One other point I wanted to highlight that you mentioned in the chat too was that inclusive playgrounds inherently need accessible parking spaces, which is why obviously like there are still parking spaces, and making sure that those accessible parking spaces can easily get into the play space are a priority of this design.
Also to Nicole's point about language barriers, we definitely do want to be inclusive. The survey was actually released in, what did we end up with? 6 languages, I think, with the possibility for more if more were needed. So we're trying to get to get broad response there. And it was one link led folks to a page where they could select a language. And so as we go into the future, we'll be hoping to echo and replicate that again. And the city also has translation services available, which is great. But we do want to do that outreach and have those conversations directly with the Seek, Skip, and life skills parents and so forth. And I know John is already working on getting that ball rolling. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Nicole. Abby, you should be allowed to unmute yourself now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Great. I actually just wanted to reiterate exactly what Nicole said about her last point and making sure that families, especially if everything seems to be moving forward with this being an inclusive playground, which is wonderful, making sure the families of the kids who are going to be the most affected by that are a central part of the decision-making process. Obviously, parents know what works best for their kids. And kids with disabilities is not a monolith. Just making sure that those voices are centered as you guys move forward. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abby.
Yeah. Just as a brief, well, John is identifying the next person. To circle back to play equipment briefly, all of the structures, all of the elements that you're seeing on these plans are really placeholders. We want to have conversations with the students, with the families, with the community as at large, and find out what jazzes people, what they're interested in. So comments about the ramp play structure and so forth are already on our radar anyway, but also really great to hear in terms of knowing what's really speaking to people. And we want to get the massing, the arrangement of things and so forth in play first, so that we know what kinds of spaces we have to work with and what's been important to people. And then we can start to really dive in and craft a fantastic play space with play structures that really work with the space, work with the needs of the students and the families, and really create something really special here.
Sorry, it was muted. Oh no, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thank you. Hi, I have a fourth grader and a seventh grader, and we have totally suffered, many of us, from our kids being inside for the majority of a 9-hour day sometimes when they're in after school. So this is phenomenal. We're so excited. And I recognize you're trying to meet so many needs in a very limited space. So just adding kind of from our family, the ways we would fall on a bunch of these different issues, since I think that's what you're asking for. Decreasing parking when possible to make the most space that can be used by the most number of people, because cars are big, but human bodies are much smaller and you can fit more in. Climate change is coming, it's here, and we really need a lot of shade and cooling features. So thank you for everything you're doing to think about that. In after school, they often can't go outside in the spring even now because it's too hot on the pavement. So shade structures, canopies, trees, water features. If this is going to be a park for the public, we need water features, and I don't see that in any of these. And I know it's probably an issue maybe in the school days, but that would be great. Love the natural materials for the benches and other things. I know they need to last a long time, but wood, stone, all of that is really great. So that these places are beautiful also. Pitch from our seventh grader, especially for pro turf and or spaces to run. The seventh grade, half of the seventh grade played football in their 15 minutes of recess. So we like option C for the layout, for that central kind of bigger space, and bigger is the gesture I'm getting over here. And then finally, it's a school. So if there are places that have some seating, you showed a kind of cool graphic with elevated seating for outdoor education. So teachers on a beautiful spring day can bring their kids out.
Yeah.
That'd be so great. Thank you.
Terrific. To water play specifically, since that was one of the sort of questions and one of the things we hadn't really touched on in the presentation. I know this is something I can discuss with John, but we've done schoolyards with water features that are, flush sprays. If you think of the ones at, for example, Albion Playground, if folks know that one, where it's 9 months out of the year, it's just a plaza space. And 3 months out of the year, which just happen to be the summer months when the schoolyard isn't as much in use, it's a spray feature, is definitely something we could consider if it works for the school administration and the city as a whole, because we'll be bringing water out to the site anyway for drinking fountains. And that sort of cooling is really valuable for the community over the summers. We'll have to look at how it interacts with summer school, but it's also possible to put timers on features that they're only usable, in the afternoon or something when summer school is in session or things like that, so that the kids aren't getting themselves soaking wet, which nobody wants. But, well, maybe the kids do.
Happy to jump in here from the city side. I know from a school perspective, having wet students come in from recess probably is not the best atmosphere. So they would definitely need to be turned off during the school year. I'm not saying no, but it might be hard to incorporate water features in this play area. I think there's definitely a cost benefit analysis that we would need to look
Sure.
at how much we're spending on all of these water features for how much it's actually used and how much we need to turn it off. Obviously, during the school year itself, we wouldn't be able to kind of turn it on and turn it off when school is on and off. So definitely some things to explore. Happy to explore them. But I think we're going to try and combat heat with a lot of shade, a lot of trees, drinking fountains, those type of elements
Sure.
will be our main combating force against the heat. It's something I'm happy to bring up though and explore if there's kind of different sequencing and different ways
Yeah,
that we can kind
we
of
can
program.
talk more about things that have worked in other spaces that might or might not work for this space.
I'll add it to the aspirational list with
There you
the
go.
buried parking and sports turf on top of that because I like that one as well. Both of them sound very wonderful for this space. If I had unlimited money. Okay, sorry. Moving on. Holly, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Thanks, John. How are you?
Well, thank you. How are you?
Great, thank you. Hi, DJ. We met a while ago
Yeah, we've met in the past. It's good
at
to hear
the
from
West
you.
Somerville School.
Yeah.
And I think these are great designs, and a lot of work has gone into this, and I appreciate that. And I think we all understand the restraints aren't just financial, but they're the physical size that we have, and we have to get parking and safe drop off, and we need to get shade and the basketball courts and green space. And none of us wants to be pitted against each other in any way. And I love some of the ideas that have come up tonight. And it's a little hard to see the details of these pictures from the presentation.
Yeah.
And I noticed you also said that the features that are in them are just for sort of placeholders. Is that how you explained it, DJ?
Yeah, at the moment, I mean the particular play features that are shown on any given plan, for example, on this one, is a structure. For example, this one is actually the structure that's in at the west. And this isn't going to be a cookie cutter. We're not going to reuse the structure from the West Somerville School, but it's a play structure of about the size that we know works. And so we kind of use it as a placeholder to show one particular style of play while we're developing sort of the bigger massing of the thing. Do we want the play in the middle and the other spaces around it, or like this, the open hardcourt sports in the middle and wrap it with play and that sort of thing. So I think that, I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised if some of the smaller individual elements show up like they're shown in the plan, although maybe in other spots. But expect the play structures to change based on the feedback that we get, and that the final plan will be sort of a combination of the features people are really finding speaking to them from each of these three designs. Does that make sense?
Sure, sure. Speaking about feedback, when was the commission going to become involved in this? Because I was very excited when the mayor presented at her ward meetings, the updates on the
Sure.
swings, and that we were going to be working with parks and public spaces on designing this inclusive playground, but you're already at a point of 3 designs. We haven't heard anything from anyone.
Sure.
That we totally understand. So our first goal here is to kind of coordinate with the schools, to kind of get their feedback. This is our first kind of public community meeting, and that's why we invited you to come to this meeting. We can work on other options to coordinate with you guys. I'm happy to share plans with you, hear different feedback from y'all. But these community meetings are kind of the best way to get all of the different groups who are involved in this project to one table so that we can hear the designs as kind of a whole.
I
That being
think
said, there are kind of different things that I've discussed with Nicole, different events where we would like to kind of go to different playgrounds. Me being a man without a child, it's actually pretty hard for me to go to a playground to make field observations. So having a cohort that could go to different universal inclusive playgrounds and have me kind of shadow them would be a wonderful option that I'm trying to work through. Ideas like this are are ways that we want to engage with the different groups, and happy to kind of work through those over the next month with you.
and
We're
I do want
actually,
to oh, go ahead,
I
Holly.
think our involvement is perceived to be more than that. We're listed as a lead alongside with you on the
Mhm.
public space and the 25 to 30 to 2030 plan. So
Yeah,
you need all public feedback, and I'm here as a resident. But and I think that one thing that one of our members brought up was in your basketball courts, if they could be able to be lowered, which is
right.
not only a feature for
Yes,
someone like him who uses a wheelchair, and would like to be able to play basketball at a court, but it would allow for children of different heights to also be able to engage. And
for
that would
sure.
look no different than any other basketball court. But
Exactly.
I don't see any feature in any of the designs that someone in a wheelchair could stay in their chair and participate in.
Sure. There are, but it's difficult to see at this scale and without the details. And I totally hear you, Holly, on wanting your involvement, and we very much do. The way I look at the difference between, ADA compliant accessible design and truly inclusive design is it's not about the big picture moves because it's those are going to happen in whatever. It's in the details. It's in things like you mentioned about having the basketball hoop have different heights available, about making sure that the glider is the sort that you can roll a wheelchair onto, or the spinner is one that someone in a mobility device can easily access and get on and participate. Um, the little inclusive thing, it's a placeholder, but the little inclusive thing we're showing in the bottom right is actually something that's designed for a wheelchair user to interact with, move through, and fully be in the space and fully participating in the play. That sort of thing. It's the devil of inclusive play and the challenge of it and the bar that needs to be met is in the details. It's in when you have a sloped walk, making sure that there's a visible edge barrier so that someone who has sight limitations or whatever can know that there's an edge there that they have to be careful of, that a wheelchair doesn't accidentally roll off. It's in the little things. And as we get these big picture moves in place of what goes where and we dive into the details, we very much want your commission's input and feedback and those sorts of lived experiences to inform the development of those details. I mean, we'll bring our own experience also from other designs and play spaces and things like that. But absolutely, we want to involve you in the conversation. The reason you haven't heard from us yet is we don't even know exactly what the questions are until we have that big picture shape of the space more developed so that we can dive into those details. I hope that helps in terms of understanding where we're coming from.
Sure, sure. Also, you kept the parking where it is, and I understand that it is sloped. Did you ever look at flipping it, where you change the topography either in sections or ramping and made the
Right.
park to the right side and then made use of a different way for drop off, maybe that side street, and had
Yeah.
parking on the other corner?
I I will say I looked at it very tangentially. The big challenge there is that for both bus traffic and general circulation, Cherry Street is a one-way downhill that can be difficult to loop up through and would require any of the school buses coming and so forth to loop through a residential area as opposed to being on Elm Street there. And getting a good loop access through ends up taking up about as much space as our expanded footprint. So we'd actually be cutting down on the play space by doing that. But I did explore it briefly with the could it flip flop kind of question.
And last
And it's
question, sorry
challenging,
to
but
take up so
no,
much time,
fine.
but where is the front door to the building on what we're looking at right
So
here?
on what we're looking at, the front door to the building is in the upper right corner there, sort of where the lighter colored pathway comes up under that proposed, in this one, L-shaped shade structure. So
Yep.
it's the furthest deep inset into that gray massive building at the top of each of the plans.
So I can tell you as a parent of a child who used a wheelchair that that's a really long distance from parking to the door. And
It
if you
is.
want your child to be using their mobility device, you've made it more difficult just with that piece out there. And that could just be a small change. But just as a point of reference, you want parking as close as possible and the
We
shortest
absolutely do.
distance,
Yeah.
And
but not losing more park space, obviously.
right. And I think DJ, you can see in this plan, if you could just highlight the bus drop-offs, there are kind of
Yeah.
opportunities
I'm gonna
for
skim back to the other
both
plan,
bus
which was
drop-off and then there's an additional pull-in area. Those spaces can maybe become accessible spaces or some other form of quick drop-off for parents who need to drop off their child with a mobility disability and then be able to park their car somewhere else. But just kind of giving these relief spaces for people to kind of park the bus, van, car, and get out safely
and,
onto the play space.
And we
that's
do have parents who have children that go here where the parent is the one who uses the wheelchair.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah. The parking spaces themselves are, nominally teacher-only parking, although I know some of it happened on the drop-off loop currently. And there is this sort of secondary entrance to the school that's halfway up the drive from Elm Street. And we've got drop-off space right next to that as well for a really short distance into the school.
Okay. Thank you very
look,
much.
you definitely want to level out the area from the entrance to the accessible spaces to make that as non-fatiguing an entry experience as possible for everybody. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you, Holly. I see two hands up. Christine, I see you're raising your hand again. I'm just gonna offer Catherine to speak first because they haven't spoken yet, and then I will go to you. Catherine, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yeah, if you can hear me,
Yes.
Thank you guys.
Oh no, I'm so sorry. I pressed mute. Give me 1 second, Catherine. I pressed the wrong button.
Cool. Does that work?
Perfect.
does.
So sorry about that.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. It's so exciting to get to see these different options, and thank you for walking us through them. I wanted to express enthusiasm about the greenscaping, enthusiasm about the reduction of parking, and about just creating another space for open space and open-ended play. I did want to encourage looking at further options for low maintenance, open-ended nature-based at other parks in Somerville and Cambridge. I think that they've done a good job of creating spaces that can have water access. So not necessarily like a splash pad or a spray deck, but like those little pump systems they have at Hoyt Sullivan and Hodgkin Curtin Park. And then even in Sacramento Field, they have one where like the water is actually off most of the time, but there are these like log-looking basins that just create a space for open-ended play. So kids will pretend to cook potions in them and will do all this sort of fun stuff. So we just love to see and emphasize those types of open-ended, natural-based play systems. One question that I did, or two questions I had. One is it possible to look at more shade structures? Because those trees around the perimeter are going to be really great in 20, 30 years, but they're going to be like baby birds, like not super cute or useful for a very long time. And I think even with a reduction in asphalt and introduction of more natural materials, just as a footnote, I would love to say like no turf on this, please. We don't need the PFAS. We don't need the microplastics. I don't think we need this. That it's still going to be really hot there. And is it possible to do temporary shade structures or to consider that? And then second, is there going to be room for residents to help choose species of those trees? Or is that something that's completely in the purview of the city or the landscape architecture firm?
We would be happy to have some input on tree selection. Obviously, we're looking at our Somerville Pollinator Action Plan that helps guide different tree species that kind of achieve those SPAP goals. But one, we're going to have to go to the Urban Forestry Committee to get approval of planting these trees. So that's a public meeting where you could go and also voice your concern for different species we're proposing or recommendations. But we're also very welcome to hearing different different plant options. I know there's some concerns about different bees and wasps that were stinging children. So if you have some experience with specific trees, happy to hear those concerns.
Would love that. I'm an urban forester, so I would love to participate in that too. So thanks.
Wonderful. You can reach out to me and I can send you information on
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes, we can look at more open-ended play. I think that's a wonderful idea. I was one of those kids making potions, so I definitely respect that. And yes, definitely hear your concerns about turf here. That's something that we're going to have to kind of figure out in the iterations of the design here.
And we can look at more shade structures in other places on the site for sure.
I think one example of a previous project I worked on for the city was Ken Kelly Park. We planted 14 trees there. I was very excited about the shade. Got there, not much shade yet. So very excited for those trees to grow in so they actually provide enough shade in that space. So we can definitely look at more shade. And also it adds another bonus of providing rain cover during rainier days. So that space is more usable during inclement weather.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for those comments. Christine, you should be able to talk now.
Hi, thank you, and sorry for coming back on again, but I'm a finance person and wanted to ask a question about one of your bullets in slide 14 on the construction start and that timeline and the comment or note that says scheduled to be determined by funding availability. So I don't know, maybe John, this is your purview, but can you talk a little bit about how the project will be funded and what are the are there is it getting in line and getting a vote from city council, or how does the funding become available?
Yes, happy to talk about this. And I might just go into a little bit of background on this, the finances for this. So a lot of our different parks, we've been building a lot of parks in the past few years. This is primarily because of three sources of revenue. ARPA funds gave us a lot of money to do a lot of projects over the past few years. That was kind of free money in a sense, where it had very few limitations on dedication of open space and perpetuity, different restrictions on the type of things you can buy with the money. So that gave us a lot of flexibility to do a lot of projects. We also have our park grants, which provide up to $500,000 each year for different park projects. And then we have our CPA, or Community Preservation Act, that gives us a lot of money each year to fund our projects. We can't use two of those items on this project. One, ARPA's expired. Two, park grants and other type of grants aren't viable for this project because we need to dedicate the parkland as open space in perpetuity if we accept those grants. With this being a schoolyard, we need to leave that space flexible for the school for future projects in 50, 100 years from now. So CPA is really our only route to funding this project. I'm currently working through a CPA application. We submitted an original application asking for $1 million for construction, which the CPA has in its pot to give us right now. We are also asking for an additional $2 million from the CPA in a bonding request. So right now the CPA is reviewing all 11 applications for open space, historic preservation, and housing, and they're going to provide funding for some of those projects, if not all of those projects. So the snag we're kind of in right now is they have the money for the $1 million, but they're currently debating about giving us the bonding for the $2 million. We have a community, not a community, we have a CPA meeting on the 17th where more discussions are going to occur, and hopefully a decision will be made to vote for this project. Once they vote yes on the project, that's committed funds in our eyes, and we are able to go out to bid on this project. So we're kind of just in a waiting pattern where we're waiting for CPA to vote on this project. And if they give us the funds, then we'll be able to continue with the schedule of summer of 2026 and 2027 with an opening after that summer.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. I see no more hands, so I think maybe we go quickly through the questions in the chat.
Yes.
And I'm gonna hit stop share on the screen just so we can see faces again rather than dealing with slides that no one's looking at. But if anyone has specific questions, we can call things back up for sure. So skimming down the chat, the first question I see is forgive me if I butcher your name, but I think it's Ali Contini Field asking if we have a portfolio of elements designed for older children and teens that the parkour area at Lincoln Park is very popular. Hopefully we covered some of that in the presentation later on, but yes, we definitely do. We've looked at that sort of thing before. We'll continue to look at that again as things go on. As has been mentioned, I'm going to skip over things that have already been answered.
I can also, yeah. So I know there's Jessica brought up a question or more of a comment that the front playground, the Seek, Skip, and Life Skills programs use it from pre-K to 8. So just being cognizant of their needs in the play space as well, being kind of in the younger age group.
Yeah.
Another question we got from Holly was, where's the data from the Who is Affected slide? Holly, I'm happy to provide that document that we gathered that information from and share it with you. I can also, if it's not already on our Summer Voice webpage, it's called the 7 Principles of Inclusive Design. If it's not on the Summer Voice page, I'll send you an email and put it up on the Summer Voice page for everyone to reference.
Yeah. Direct access from classrooms benefit in terms of transition time to or from the short recesses, aside from the security concerns. Very much true. And frankly, those doors aren't going to go away, but it is only 4 of the classrooms that exit directly onto the.
I would like to add the caveat that the recess leaves from the 2nd floor and comes down the pool staircase into the playground itself. So there's very few, if any, kids coming out of those doors into the playground itself. So they'll be using the staircase. So streamlining that access into the play space is key to kind of giving the kids their full 10 minutes of play.
There was a question from Holly about how many teachers at Kennedy focus on special ed therapy and specialized instruction versus other schools where we compare parking needs. Yeah, absolutely. That's why we're trying to look at it more from a a staff perspective, and we've dug into that staff question with the school administration. Even though the parking counts compared to others don't those were based on student, but that was just the starting point. For the design of the Kennedy specifically, we're looking at the actual staffing of the Kennedy. Considering the age ranges of the children who, this is from Laurent Bitton, another element of inclusivity should be considering the age ranges who attend the school. We have pre-K through 8th grade at the Kennedy, and engaging our older students is key to success. Absolutely. Very much agreed. Becky Lopes-Vilho pointed out, additional entry points are very challenging given limited staffing resources. And Principal Marshall also echoed that in a comment directly to us. Yes, limited staffing is definitely a concern. I don't think that, even though we showed it on one of the plans, I think it is highly unlikely, unless we hear a strong push for it from the community, that a scheme with 4 actual entry points is really workable. But on the other hand, we need to put it out there and make sure that that feedback is the feedback we get, rather than simply making the assumption that that's what the design should be. We want to put things in front of the community, in front of the larger group, and get the feedback, rather than simply assuming we know the answers and ruling things in or out, if that makes sense.
It's just echoing Principal Marshall, Vice Principal Becky's concerns. We definitely understand that. I think this was just an idea to kind of stir the pot in a way, but it definitely seems a little excessive for a play space.
There we go.
Here, yeah.
I apologize, Becky, if you're still on. I knew I recognized your name from somewhere. I hadn't processed that it was because you're the vice principal that we've interacted with.
No, sorry, Becky's in the PTA. Sorry.
Oh, PTA. Nope. Okay. That's
Vice Principal Sam Patton.
There we go. Okay. Anyway, I knew I recognized the name from somewhere. Anyway, yes. Let's see.
I think the other question I see next is Christine talking about lining up in the basketball courts. Would one basketball court provide sufficient space for them to line up? That's a very valid concern, something that we have to look at during our different designs. It's definitely something we can look to create painted graphics on the ground. I worked on the Edgerly project, where we kind of created those painted graphics on the ground to also help. It was a game for the kids, but also for the teachers to help line kids up. There's other ways that we can kind of achieve those lining up patterns, and making sure we carve out enough space in the play space itself so that those can occur.
Yep. Very much so. Trying to look for anything that hasn't been addressed. There are comments about adjustable basketball poles and so forth from folks that we've spoken to. I think
so
one of the comments that did come up was Alex Epstein commented that he would have liked to see, or she, I don't want to assume from an Alex, but would have liked to see 3 design options for the playground based on what's possible by reallocating different amounts of the current parking lot and bus loop. The reason we chose not to go that route and are sort of exploring the parking separately is that we didn't want the design decisions to be didn't want the feedback to be dictated by how much parking was or wasn't in one of the designs in either direction. So we're sort of trying to figure out the right amount of space and have that conversation and separately have a conversation about the general shape of the design and division of spaces for things. So that's why the three schemes have the same parking lot and bus loop. Because that's a separate conversation that's still going on, if that makes sense. Okay, where were we in the
The next one I see is from Rashid that says, the way I see the designs, they are so nice, but in my understanding, we need to look at some support equipment like retractable wheelchair transfer that can be used when needed. I think this is a great idea that we definitely need to, thank you for the reminder. We definitely need to think about these elements as we're
Yes.
designing the space and making sure we kind of carve out some space for these elements that are needed.
Yeah. And I want to echo too that comes back to the point I was discussing with Holly, where it's really that's all in the details once we have the big picture sort of formed. And so we definitely will dig into that. That's definitely on the radar and the mind as we're designing. Yeah. Um, yep, naming that a gathering space for adults outside would be welcome, very much so. Um, there was a comment via Catherine from her third grader at the Kennedy. Climbing is important to me. I want to see climbing structures like the spider web that is in the tot lot and some other climbing structures. Awesome. The feedback from kids is super important. Catherine, thank you to Jay for participating and making sure that got heard. Let's
It's not for
teens and tweens, and a comment from Ellie about if the structures aren't challenging enough, kids make their own challenges by using the elements in ways they're not designed for, which is totally true. Morse Kelly is specifically a small 2 to 5 structure, and there's not really older kids equipment there. I think that the goal here is definitely to aim for the right age range for this space. We shouldn't run into that problem here, although kids will still find ways to use things in unintended ways. And so it's a question of how to make the right level of risk. Risk without hazard, I think, is sort of the watchword, so that kids can control their level of challenge and really embrace doing as much as they can.
One other comment I see is from Emily, full-size basketball court that can be also used for soccer, football, etc., is definitely a priority for my kids. Would the wider hoops / goals work on option B as well, similar to what's at Albion? I believe the Kennedy will be the only Somerville school without any field, so having something to at least take the place of that would be valuable. I believe I'm thinking of the proper structure. It's kind of a basketball ball
Yeah.
with a hole carved out for a net as well. Yes, things like these are the exact option we're kind of looking for in these spaces, creating multi-use courts where kids can kind of play whatever game they want. One thing that we're hearing from the vice principal was that sometimes there's kids who love playing basketball. Some years there's not. It's kind of usually the older kids who like playing basketball. So that comment about having adjustable height hoops can maybe achieve that goal, but also having the flexibility to, if this cohort is very interested in soccer rather than basketball, giving them the flexibility to kind of use that active rectangle however they best see fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, the chat moved to the small screen when I ended the the thing. I'm trying to read them.
Don't worry, I'm on a roll. Catherine also brought up a comment saying, if not a splash pad spray deck, then possibly a water pumping feature like the one at Cambridge Commons. This is something we can explore. It's something that we'll have to kind of weigh between all the other options, but something that we can definitely bring up with the school and see their favorability with kind of water play in the schoolyard itself.
Yep. Catherine brought up, I think it'd be great for the LA firm, that's us, to put together a list of potential centerpiece elements that are fully wheelchair accessible. The glider was one of those options, seems like one for exploration. Absolutely, Catherine, you're sort of previewing some of the questions that'll be in that second survey to really get broader feedback about which of those types of things speak to people the most, so that we can kind of get a sense for which ones are most important and then fit in as many as we can based on the space available. It's definitely an upcoming question for sure. There's a question from Jessica. Somerville has a big rat issue. Oh boy, yep. And the Kennedy has had rats need to be evicted from walls between classrooms, perhaps trees that are not fruit bearing. Absolutely. Also, fruits get thrown around by mischievous 10-year-olds and things like that. Not speaking from personal experience, but yes. Yeah. Totally agreed. Totally agreed. There were comments from a few folks of their fifth graders preferring option B, a fourth grader preferred option C for the large central open space, things like that.
Holly, I see your comment about the December 10th meeting. Please send me an email and we can follow up after this meeting about that.
Sounds great. There's a comment from Cassie Johannes. Personally, I don't think we need swings at the front lot. They take up so much space, and I think we can add in a lot more inclusive elements elsewhere. Swings are definitely a polarizing one in terms of schools because they do take up a lot of space per kid. The group swings, the basket swings are a valuable way to sort of try to straddle that option. But in terms of inclusivity too, the more adaptive molded swing seats take up the space of a normal swing set in many ways. And the vestibular motion that you get from the experience of swinging is incredibly valuable. So it's something we want to weigh the pros and cons of, especially in this setting. The wheelchair glider that was being discussed it gets a long way towards that. It's not quite as thrilling, but it definitely gets that vestibular stimulation in a really space efficient way that turns it into a group activity and so forth.
So yeah, the next question I see is, since all the school buses serving Kennedy are all small type A's and vans, I wonder if the bus loop needs to be as sweeping as it is. Could the bus drop-off be configured as a single driving lane along the Elm Street sidewalk, just north of the grass strip and trees, running one way from the inlet at the corner of Cherry/Elm to an outlet at the existing Elm entrance? Wonder if a compact configuration like that could open up nearly the entire front lot for parkland. That is a potential. That is something that we can explore as we're kind of exploring parking and circulation. We definitely do need to coordinate with bus circulation, but also fire and safety vehicles. We need to be able to have a emergency vehicle go around a bus or car that is broken down or parked in that lane. So there are some restrictions that we do need to obey here. And those are some that come to my mind, but we are still obviously reviewing this circulation and parking and
the turning radiuses for fire apparatus are part of what drives the sweeping feel of that drop-off lane more so than school buses. We're aware that they're all small buses and vans. Yep. There was a question from Nicole, are ramps possible on the main structures in options B and C? I mean, as mentioned, the structures are sort of more placeholders. I would say ramped structures are definitely possible with the overall layouts of options B and C. Whether the particular structures that are there could take ramps, I think they tend to be more open and net-based, which lend themselves to a different sort of wheelchair accessibility rather than ramps. And in some ways, I have mixed feelings about ramped structures in terms of inclusivity, because they allow a wheelchair user to get onto most of the structure, but then, what are you getting out of the wheelchair to go down the slide, but then your wheelchair is at the top of the slide and so forth. It creates universal access, but doesn't always rise to the bar of true inclusion. We want to look at that. We want to get into the details and make sure that we're not getting halfway there. But we do want to have those conversations still further. Yeah, and then the last question in the chat, unless someone adds another one soon. If we plan on utilizing outdoor seating and take into consideration graduations, could we consider almost Roman amphitheater style seating to allow for presentations, performances, lessons, etc.? We absolutely could. We've done that in other schoolyards where there's sort of stepped seating that fits that kind of space, and they work really well. It's a different sort of use of the space, and I guess would be a fourth type of seating that we hadn't already shown, and we will, yeah, we'll gather more feedback on that and so forth. I think that's a great point, that it can be fixed seating that still takes that sort of use into account, but at other times is usable in other ways, for sure. Yeah.
I don't see any more
Yeah.
comments or chat in the comment bar. If there's any remaining questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Thank you, Principal Marshall, for carving out some time to come to this presentation. Yes. We really appreciate that. DJ, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the slideshow just so I can talk about our next steps just one last time, and where people can.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Nicole put in a comment, by the way, about needing to discuss the ramp issue more with parents of kids with physical disabilities, because that has not been her experience. Netted structures that are more open are not accessible. Very much appreciated. We will definitely continue those conversations, Nicole.
Yes.
And yeah, that's exactly the sort of input that we need to get. And John requested the last slide. Oh, I bet I can just hit end. Nope, didn't work.
And while you're getting there, I can answer Samantha's question. Are you going to specifically reach out for involvement with the Special Education Parents Advisory Council, CPAC? Yes, there are a bunch of different groups that we would like to engage with throughout this process. Like I was saying to Holly, I will be reaching out to that group. I have some of their contact information. So we will be engaging with you probably over the next few weeks to try and schedule some time with your group as well as other groups. And thank you, DJ, for bringing up this slide. So thank you very much for taking the time. I know these community meetings are a lot. It's very hard to carve out this time, especially as parents. I know this is a very crucial time in your day. And so I really appreciate you all taking the time to meet with us. Again, this meeting is going to be recorded up on our Summer Voice page, along with the PDF of this presentation, as well as a survey that will be coming in the next week. So please tell your friends, family members, anyone else who might be interested in this project that they can find all of that information on the Summer Voice page, which again, they can just Google Kennedy School Playground Renovations Project and it's going to come up, or just going on the Summer Voice page. And please feel free to reach out to me with any questions, comments, concerns, or last minute notes that you want me to know about this project. I'm always available. Email is usually the best way to reach me, but if you leave a voice message, I will be able to respond to it. And again,
Wonderful.
thank you all so much for taking the time to
Yeah.
come to this meeting. Thank you, CBA. And finally, I just want to thank everyone who submitted a report or a comment card to the CPA application. We received more than 100 responses. Other projects on the CPA received 4, 5 responses. So it truly shows how much excitement there is for this project. I read all of the different notes and kind of gathered information, inspiration from those comments, but it's really exciting and endearing to see this much support for a project. We really appreciate it. This support is really going to make funding this project that much easier. So I just wanted to thank everyone for attending and for participating in that CPA application. Thank you very much.
I want to echo also, having looked through all of the comments on the survey responses. Thank you to everyone that participated in the survey, all 78 of you. Tons of great comments, lots of wonderful thoughts, and we look forward to further conversations with everybody about things as this keeps rolling forward. And yeah, with that, I need to go help my 11-year-old get to bed on time. Fortunately, folks, there's light at the end of the tunnel. My high schooler now gets herself to bed more or less on time, more or less on her own. So
better than me.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for attending this meeting. And with that, the meeting is closed, but please feel free to reach out to me if there's any concerns or comments. Thank you all.
Perfect.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Good night.